We're on, Mark.
Oh, we aren't? Oh, welcome back to Civil Discourse Now.
Thank you, Bernard Shaw.
I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden.
We're here on August 25th, 2012. Our guests are Pat Andrews, Jeff Cox. Pat is a blogger on Enough Indianapolis.
Enough Indy.
Enough Indy. I apologize.
That's okay.
It's an excellent blog. And Jeff, what's your...
Do you have to enter Blogspot when you type it in?
No.
Okay. Just enoughindy.com.
.com.
Right.
And Jeff, you're a lawyer here.
Mm-hmm.
You also, what's your contact information?
Well, my blog is No Boxes Allowed with dashes in between. .blogspot.com. I got a law practice here, jrcoxlawllc.com. And, of course, we got the book coming out next year, Rising Sun, Falling Skies, about the Java Sea campaign and early World War II in the Pacific.
We're here to talk today about tax incentive financing districts. And, Pat, you have a special expertise, I think, in that. I think everybody in this area recognizes that is an area of your expertise. You've written quite a bit about it on your blog. You're very knowledgeable about it. People don't understand necessarily what a TIF is. A lot of them don't even know that there are TIFs that exist. Mm-hmm. Could you tell the viewers what a TIF is?
A TIF is an area that is defined, a geography, a footprint, if you will, in Marion County. And at day zero, supposedly, all of the development and all the taxes, property taxes that are collected from this footprint continue to flow to the schools and the city and the library. But any development that occurs after that and the property taxes that are attributable to that added development, that's called the increment. Those taxes now go to a special fund that can be used to pay off bonds or to finance specific projects.
And the projects are funded by loans that essentially are taken out by the city. Am I correct in that?
TIFs come in many flavors and sizes. There are TIFs in Marion County, and if we can just keep to Marion County, that would be easier. There's only, I believe, 2 states that don't have TIFs, and I think it's Arizona, which never had them, and California, which just canceled every one of them.
And California is where TIFs started.
Yes.
And they've canceled them. They won't do them anymore.
Yes. But speaking for the variety within Marion County, you have TIFs that gather property tax money, and then they decide what project they want to fund after the money has been accumulated. So those TIFs aren't floating bonds and then repaying the bonds with the revenue stream from the TIF. But you have other TIFs like the more famous TIFs, the downtown TIF, the airport TIF, that floated bonds at the initial outset of the TIF and now owe the bondholders payments. And they use the property tax revenues from the TIF to repay those bonds. So it had a huge wad of cash at the beginning that they could use to finance a specific development.
So they get a bunch of cash up front, and they're supposed, and it's like they'll say, we've got impacted. Like I blogged on this today on on this website for Civil Discourse Now. Not as knowledgeably as you, but I was trying to talk about. Let's say you got a 4-block area in a city that is really run down, and this city leaders believe that if they put development in there, by developing that area, instead of having old houses and empty lots and nobody having businesses there, they talk about putting in like a couple of apartment buildings and some stores, and you'll have property generating more revenue. And so the idea sounds really great. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the types of TIFs. Am I right?
Yes, there are redevelopment TIFs, which do seek to take areas that have seen better days and run down. Perhaps the service businesses like grocery stores and department stores have left, and there's interest in pulling those stores back into that community and letting that spark more private investment. Now that's the piece that sort of gets lost, but the idea in any of the TIFs, as I understand it, is that if only we could do this one thing, that would be the catalytic spot. That would be the thing that just got everything going, got the ball rolling downhill. That's just the one impediment that this area, this block, this part of the community has. If we can only fix that one problem, then everything is going to work itself out and we can walk away and everybody will benefit.
Pat, why not let the money just go into the general fund and then pass an ordinance or whatever to give that money out to a particular project?
My thinking is what happens is that the city of Indianapolis, the mayor in particular, through the Metropolitan Development Commission, who technically has the say-so on these things, the city gets to capture all the property taxes in that increment. Taxes that would have gone to the schools, which generally is about half of your property taxes, flows to schools. But instead, the mayor gets to hold those and spend them too. So it creates for the mayor a larger basket of money than if it was only the taxes that went to the city's general fund.
Okay, so
if you let it flow naturally, the city would only have about a third of the funds to spend in these areas.
Because someone would go to schools and go to libraries.
Right. So I think that's really why they don't want them going to the general fund, because they'd lose 2/3 of the money.
And taken away from other governmental entities.
Yes.
Yeah, and not. I'm not using. I would never use this term in connection with Indianapolis, but I know that in Chicago they referred to Mayor Daley's use of TIFs on a massive scale as a slush fund, because he was able to spread things around and make up for budget deficits and make it look like in his 22 years tenure as mayor that there hadn't been budget deficits when in fact there had. And Indianapolis, there's some indication that Indianapolis has used TIF monies to shore up. I guess I am getting to Indianapolis.
It isn't just rumors, it's part of the budget. The really vibrant TIF we have, the only really vibrant TIF we have, I believe, is the downtown TIF. It started with the thought of financing Circle Center Mall. That Circle Center Mall, if only we had a mall downtown, everything else would come to fruition on its own with private money and not public dollars. Well, they haven't, that downtown area has developed so well that they take in far more money every year than they need to pay bonds. But what they've done is start to finance other projects with that extra money, with that excess money. And for this calendar year, 2012's city budget, $40 million has been taken from that TIF to balance our city budget. And again, half of that money kind of belongs to the schools. But because the mayor can follow these threads, he's pulled it all into our city budget.
Let's be clear here. When you say that at day zero, everything behind that, it's still in that district, it still goes to the schools and goes to the libraries. But at day one, anything after that goes into the TIF district.
Okay, now that's one of the myths that has this TIF study commission has shown clearly.
And there's just been a study commission that's generated a report.
Yes, it was at the behest of the council, and that was Brian Maher, Councilor Mahern was the one who put this forward, and there was a commission that had several members of the council, members from the Indiana legislature, the auditor, the city controller, the bond bank director, all got together. But there are many myths that are put out to the public, and the idea of this sacrosanct base, everything on day zero that's generating property taxes, those taxes will continue to flow forever to the schools and the library, etc. That turns out not to be true. And I have the numbers for 2010 to 2011, and in that 1 year, $40 million of base eroded and was put into the increment.
Well, how could they do that legally?
They fill out a form,
They'll do it.
Yeah.
and that's all it takes. So
So if they can't pay off the bonds or pay the bonds, they can go into the base.
no, actually, the last couple of years it's been recession driven because our property values are dropping. The state wants all debt to be secured, so the base can erode to make sure that however much money a TIF generated the prior year, it's going to generate at least that much
Really?
the next year. So like the downtown TIF is doing exceedingly well. There's very little left in the base. It's eroded, it's not to zero. Some segments of it are at zero, but it's eroded considerably through these kind of mechanisms that are allowed by law.
And the idea on part of it is that somehow they're kind of like taxing on future benefits. There's some kind of a mechanism where they're kind of selling blue sky in a way.
Well, I think if they stuck to the core assertions that they promote TIFs with, there might be more reason to embrace them going forward. But the real activities in TIFs speak to different ambitions. For instance, the downtown TIF, balancing our city budget. That was never the intention.
Did some of the money go to the Pacers too?
Yes, $8 million a year goes from the downtown TIF to the CIB, ostensibly to support the ICVA, the Visitors
Now that is a
Association.
slush fund.
And
That's
the
a slush
CIB
fund.
is the CIB is the Capital Improvement Board.
Yes,
That
and they
runs
oversee
sports
all
stadiums.
the sports stuff.
Well, they don't run all the sports
They
stuff.
oversee the
I mean,
buildings.
Jim Irsay and the Simons oversee the sports stuff.
Yes.
Actually, at Lucas Oil Stadium, we have to
We
run
maintain
that part.
it,
We
yeah.
maintain it.
Okay,
We
so
run that
they
place.
call the shots and we pay the bills.
Oh, yes.
Oh, well, that's kind of my
Sports.
point.
Well, that was the price to pay for keeping the Colts. Otherwise, if
That's
that
an
deal,
old
Then
show.
it's worth it.
I'm not a Colts fan. I'm not a Colts fan. I'm just pointing out if you wanted to keep the Colts, that was the price to pay.
Well,
they
it's
weren't going to accept anything
debatable.
less.
We can go off on that tangent if
Yeah.
you like. There's some other examples of sports teams who actually pay for their own stadiums to
Oh, yeah.
a far greater extent.
Oh
than
yeah,
we do.
I'm not debating that. I'm saying that the Colts were going to move.
There's a
absent
wiggle
that.
room between zero help and $720 million help. So.
Well, I just think that, as a fan of the Chicago Cubs, I can say I'm always chagrined when a stadium is named after a ballpark after a business.
When they didn't pay for
Probably
it.
the
Wrigley
first
Field
one.
will never be. We're gonna wrap up this segment. We'll be back in just a minute. We're at the end of our second segment. We'll be back in just